So, hello guys, this is the part 2 of the period of restrictive trade or the Galleon trade. Do you still remember the Galleon trade, guys? Okay, so let's proceed. The period of restrictive trade for more than 200 years, from 1593 to 1815, the Spaniards limited Philippine trade to Mexico and some oriental ports. Before that time, the Manila traders and merchants were free to make trade with Japan, China, Java, Sumatra, Cambodia, and Malacca. Goods bought from these countries were shipped to Mexico. In this way, the merchants and traders in the Philippines were able to earn huge profits. However, the merchants of Cadiz and Sevilla, Spain, did not like this because the Oriental products were competing against their goods. So, they appealed to the king to limit Philippine trade between Manila and Mexico. Since Europe at that time believed in the doctrine of mercantilism, the king of Spain, acting upon the protests of the Cadiz and Sevilla merchants, limited the trade of the Philippines to Mexico. The Manila merchants protested against the royal decree, and for almost 200 years they waged a bitter fight with the Cadiz and Sevilla merchants. Under the Spain's restrictive commercial policy, the trade between the Philippines and Mexico, known as the Galleon trade, became a government monopoly. The persons who could participate in the Galleon trade were the Governor-General, the friars, the high civil officials, and their friends, and the widows of retired Spanish officials. They possessed boletas or tickets, which were certificates of ownership or shares. Each share was worth about 250 pesos. So we know how much it was or cost those days, the 250 pesos. So each boleta corresponded to a compartment of the galleon. At the beginning of the Galleon trade, the ships sailed from Navidad, Mexico. From that time to 1815, the Galleon trade was known as the Manila-Acapulco trade. So, I remember. The Galleon usually left Manila for Acapulco in July of each year in order to take advantage of the southwesterly winds. It passed through the San Bernardo Strait, northward to the 30th parallel, and then eastward to coast of California. It took more than 200 days for the galleon to reach Acapulco. On the other hand, the return voyage to Manila started in February or March. It took from 75 to 90 days for the galleon to travel from Acapulco to Manila. The galleon was a treasure ship, for it carried oriental goods such as silk, Chinese porcelain, perfumes, precious stones, and cotton fabrics to Mexico. On its return voyage, it carried silver pesos amounting to 2 or 3 million pesos. This represented the capital and profits of the trade. Aside from this money, the galleon also carried letters, official decrees and instruction, and the real situado or royal subsidy. As already pointed out, the subsidy amounted to 250,000 pesos a year and was used to pay for the administrative expenses of the Philippines. The departure and arrival of the galleon were events of importance to the officials of Manila. They were holidays. The people were in a festive mood. The streets were decorated. Music was played in the public plazas, and the Deums were sung in the churches. The galleon anchored off Cavite, and small ships carried the goods from the galleon to the bank of the Pasig River. The obras pillas. Not all of the merchants who participated in the galleon trade had enough money. Most of them borrowed from the obras pillas or pious works, which were some kind of banks. The obras pillas owned funds contributed by wealthy citizens to be used for religious purposes. They were managed by cofradías or religious confraternities. A merchant who wanted capital to invest in the galleon trade borrowed money from the obras pillas at the rate of 50% annually. If the money was to be used for trade in India, the interest was 35%, and it for trade with China, 25%. Because most of the borrowers gambled away their borrowed money in risky speculations, and because funds lent were usually not audited, the obras pillas incurred huge losses. And the end of the galleon trade. The galleon trade was not always profitable. In some cases, the galleons were held up by Dutch or English buccaneers and their cargoes confiscated. Then again, same galleons were lost because of typhoons. The galleon trade came to an end early in the 19th century. At the beginning of this century, the economic thinking in Europe changed from the doctrine of mercantilism to that of laissez-faire or let alone. According to the doctrine of laissez-faire, trade and production of goods should be free and not limited by many laws and regulations, except the most necessary for the good of the majority. As a consequence of this new doctrine, the nations of Europe adopted the policy of commercial freedom. Because of the restrictive nature of the galleon trade, attempts were made to abolish it. In 1813, the Spanish legislature, called the Cortes, abolished the galleon trade, but King Fernando VII did not approve the measure. However, the same measure was again submitted to the king, who in 1815 issued a decree abolishing the galleon trade. This does not mean, however, that the trade between Manila and Mexico was abolished. It continued, only the monopoly was abolished. Later, ports in other Latin America countries like Peru and Ecuador were opened to Philippine trade. When Mexico declared its independence from Spain in 1821, the direct relations between the Philippines and Mexico were cut off. The monopolistic galleon trade was disadvantageous to the Philippines. In the first place, the economic development of the country was hindered owing to the negligence of the officials who thought of nothing but the profits from the galleon trade. In the second place, the galleon trade enriched only a few Spaniards and did not benefit the Filipinos. Lastly, the administration of the provinces was neglected by the Spanish officials who migrated to Manila to engage in the galleon trade. With the end of the monopoly of the galleon trade, the Spanish officials once more turned their attention to Philippine affairs. So, guys, this is the picture of the transportation during the Spanish period. That's it, the ship, okay, or the cruise. So again, guys, that's it, and again, thank you so much for watching.